So this is the February 2024 Consortium Special Interest Group for koha-US. Hello to everybody, and I don't have an agenda. There isn't, nobody emailed me and said that there was anything specific they wanted to talk about, or if they did, I didn't get it. So it's kind of whatever you guys want to talk about, and so I'll open it up. Are there any bugs, anything interesting anybody's doing, any problems anybody's having, any bugs you want to discuss, anything going on? I think Eileen's shrug kind of says a lot right there.
Well, this was the first meeting we had with Bywater earlier with our customer service person where we had nothing really, very little.
That's good.
Just one acquisitions bug, but yeah, very little. I probably jinxed it by saying that, but yeah.
Everything will start breaking tomorrow.
I know. Well, we did have that outage earlier in the week, which was unfortunately, yeah.
That affected us, and I think it affected a lot of people. It didn't affect everybody at the same time.
Oh.
It kind of rolled around. I phoned it. Apparently I was the first one that phoned it in when I got here at like 7:30 in the morning. Everything seemed to work fine, and then I did some other stuff, and our library started opening up, and that's when everything started crashing because it had to do with session logs. I'm trying to look for. Okay, here's a bug that's a feature that's coming in. I don't know which master it was pushed to, but I'll put the bug in the chat window. I thought this was really interesting, you know, because at the consortium meetings, we've talked a lot about messages the last few times, and you know, because we spent a lot of time talking about the holds, digest messages, but this was add the ability to generate custom slips for patrons. And so I put the bug link in the window, and I'm trying to scroll to the bottom. So it'll be in 2311, which will be our next upgrade for Bywater customers. But the idea is that you can just create a slip and then put a button for it on the toolbar, and the slip will do whatever you want it to do. So it'll just be like a free form slip to print out, which could replace the patron summary, I think is the idea. That's one of the ideas suggested, because right now, when you go to a patron, you click on print summary, that you have no control over what the content of that is or what the size and shape of it is. But this would allow you to create whatever kind of custom message you want, and then just link it to that button and print it. So I'm kind of excited about that. Was nice to see, because I think a lot of that summary data could be, our libraries use we use portable Firefox, and we set it up so that whenever you print anything, you don't get the dialog box. It just prints direct to the receipt printer, and so anything that's not the right size to fit on a receipt printer kind of becomes a hassle. And the account summary you have no control over the content of that, so that could be used to replace that. So,
or could you leave the account summary and add, say, if you have an upcoming event or something? We used to be able to do that in our last system within limits. You know, join us for something. You could add that to the end, maybe.
Well, this would be a thing that you would press the button and it would just print that receipt. You should already be able to add that content to like a receipt.
Oh, okay. We probably can. Okay. So this would be instead of the account summary. Is that what you're saying? Or you could add
It'd be
additional,
it'd be whatever you want it to be.
whatever you want. Okay.
Yeah. I use jQuery. One of our libraries, people come in and they need their library card number to log into a computer. And they come up to the desk and they say, well, I don't have my library card number with me. Could you give me my library card number? And so I just use a piece of jQuery to create a button that just prints their card number. And this could be used to do that too.
Oh, that is so cool. Have you posted that to the wiki yet?
I don't know. But it's you guys should see Koha, right? This is one of my test patrons. So I've just got it here as a button print card number. That's an awfully long time for a preview there.
That happens so often in our libraries. They would love that for
yeah, and that's all it does is it just prints that. So all right, let me make a note to add that to the I'm not I don't think it's on there, but I can make sure that it is. And now that I have a note, I'll remember to do that, hopefully. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? I see that Bob is here, so this is a tangent. How's everything, Bob? How's the baby?
Living, so that's good. That's the primary goal at this point.
Well, congratulations.
No, thank you. Yeah.
What's the name?
Sebastian.
Cool.
So he's upset about something upstairs right now, but I was with him this morning, so I get to work for a few hours and then do more stuff this afternoon.
Cool.
I'm curious. We just joined about 6 months ago. We left a big consortium and we went on our own. And now we're trying to, we have 2 libraries that are in our county and they're on, each of them are on a different system, but we're trying to convince them to join us so we can have a valley-wide library system, which we've never had. We're a mountain town and there's one at the south end and one at the north end. And I was joined kind of curious as to if anybody has any experience or feedback or suggestions for how we should proceed just doing a multi-library system, because it was pretty simple for ourselves, but what's kind of the caveats or the big things we should watch out for as we try to add 2 libraries, one that's a really robust library and another library that has one person. That she basically does everything. So just curious if anybody had anything to offer.
So where is Hailey?
Yeah.
We're in Idaho, near Sun Valley Ski Resort, right in South Central Idaho.
I am from Idaho originally. There's the Snake River behind me.
Oh, that's great. Where were you? What town were you from?
I grew up in Idaho Falls, but I worked in Moscow at Moscow Public Library at Latah County Library District for a long time. So
yeah.
I guess the one thing I would say to start off with, the non-Koha related things that I would start off with are come up with a set of rules, like a set of bylaws of, what you're going to do and what the governance is, who's in charge, how do you govern yourself? When I was in Idaho, I worked for a time at Boise Public Library, which you guys were a part of that consortium.
Yep.
And then I was at the Latah County Library as a part of the ValNet consortium. And the ValNet consortium, the Links consortium, when I was there, Laurel White was like this, her title was system administrator at Boise Public Library for a time. And she was the go-to person for questions about the system. But when I worked in Latah County, that consortium was governed by the directors of each library would meet. And there was like a core group. It was a big enough consortium that there was a core group of like the 5 biggest libraries would meet monthly and deal with issues. So I would come up with, those are the things that I would worry about first, is how are we gonna pay for things? How are we gonna govern things? What do we do if somebody, how do we kick somebody out if they're not being good? How do we add new libraries? What are the rules, and how do we decide what kind of payments people make to support this system? I would start there.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has any other advice.
Yes, speaking from a consortium that has lots of libraries, Koha allows you to make everything nice and custom for everyone, but then that becomes a headache administratively. So if you can agree to things like, we're only using these item types, we're only using this and this, that sort of stuff is gonna make it a lot easier to administer. So I'm not sure if you have somebody that would be their job to administer it. That's what I do on behalf of all our libraries and my staff and I. So we can do that. But if you don't have anybody doing that, then you probably want to come to agreements ahead of time, because you can get really deep in the weeds of doing lots of customizations that might seem like, oh, this is really important to us that we have this particular unique item type. But then if you don't have somebody behind the scenes that's actually tracking all that and maintaining it, then it can be it can cause a lot of problems. So that would probably be my number one suggestion before the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, we're similar. We're a consortium of 13 libraries, but we're all independently from each other, and we have a board for the consortium that has its rules and how it governs and how it divides everything up. And then we also have what we call the operating guidelines that set things like that we only have these 15 item types, and you can't create a new item type, and how sharing works, how fines work. And I think one of the biggest things is you kind of want to look at what stuff can only be defined at the system level versus the library level, because then you need to agree on those, like the maximums of numbers of holds or things like that, that you would have to say, we have to have this setting and we shouldn't change it unless we all agree to change it. That's how we kind of handle it.
Okay,
And
so,
there are, yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. So on that note, so some things like if we check out 40 books and another library checks out 50, is that a systems thing, or can you modify those, like what a system is versus a library setting? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Are some of those across the libraries, or are they all independent?
There's some things that they have like a setting in the system settings, and then the libraries can have their own settings, like how many checkouts per patrons and stuff. But I know like the one that we have that makes it weird for us is like hold expiration date. That has to be 7 days, no matter which library, because that's set at the system level. And then the other thing is we don't have our long overdue cron turned on, because we all have different long overdue ways of doing it. And so if we could be the same across the board, then we could turn that on, or if they set it up so that we could adjust it per library, then we would use it. But right now we have to manually bill all of our long overdues.
Okay.
I would suggest, as a consortium, we went through a migration in 2002 to another system, and we've just moved to Koha in the last year, but they're joining you. So you could put forth what your lending periods are, what your situation is towards fines, and, you know, allow for growth. But the more consensus you get with the loan rules, the holds, the lending periods, the better, especially if you're sharing. We share just about everything in our consortium. And it's really important to have the same policies as much as possible. The only place we sort of allow more leeway, give more leeway, is with Library of Things. But even within that, we're trying to set out choices. You know, you want to loan it for 1 week, you want to loan it for 3 days, so that it's not just all over the place. Michelle at CLAMS, who's at this meeting, manages the loan rules, and it can get really tricky. So you're in a position of power, I guess, in that they're joining you, but at the same time, you might have to make some concessions. But the more consensus there is, really, the better. Also, if you wanted to see bylaws, that's like more the organizational thing. I'm happy if you email me to share our bylaws. But I mean, the system-wide policies are really important, and start as you mean to go on.
Okay, great.
That's what
Thank
I
you.
would do.
Yeah, I would love to get your bylaws, maybe.
I'll put my email in the
Okay, that'd be great.
chat.
Thank you. Thanks,
Just-
everyone.
Just to
Or-
build a little bit on what Eileen was saying, the most contentious thing in our consortium has been the sharing policy. So you need to be very clear on what is to be shared and what doesn't have to be shared, if assuming you are going to be sharing materials. Because we've had, even though when you join our consortium, we make it very clear that the bulk of your collection has to be shared, we always end up with libraries that start trying to find clever ways to not share this, that, or the other, because they're scared it's going to be damaged or lost by some other library. It's okay if their patrons do it, but they don't want other libraries' patrons doing it.
Okay, great. Good to know. Thank you.
You know, when I was at the Valnet Consortium in particular, there was an attitude that, and even when I was at Boise Public Library, I was the bookmobile driver. And I would come into arguments with other staff at Boise Public Library when I would put things on the bookmobile, and they would say, well, we didn't buy that for the bookmobile. We bought that for our patrons. And it's the same people. They were all the same patrons. And that's the one thing that I would say that you want to make clear to anybody that joins a consortium at this startup, is that everybody is, if you join, then your patrons and our patrons are all our patrons. You know, there aren't patrons of this library and patrons of other libraries. Once you're in the consortium, they're all our patrons. And if you can start that at the beginning, that's a good place to start with that, because eventually somebody's going to come along and say, well, those are those patrons at that other library. You know, they don't count. They're not the same as our patrons. You've got to get it from the beginning that everybody that is a patron is our patron. So.
Great. Okay. Good
And
to
the
know.
thing is for them to remember, even though sometimes they don't like being reminded of this, that as a small library, you're limited in the resources you can offer your patrons. But when you pool together, that it's wide open.
Exactly.
And it's a disservice to patrons to have different loan periods, different fines, different holds. So, you know, when you emphasize the service to patrons and making it uniform, it's not just for the sake of we're telling you what to do type of thing.
Right. Great. Thank you, guys.
Len, are you expecting these to be the only two that join, or do you think it may grow beyond that?
I think we see it growing beyond that. We're the only libraries in this county, but we do have libraries, small libraries that are more than 50 miles away, that we kind of see being potential members down the road. Like there's Fairfield and there's Stanley, they're little libraries. Stanley's in another consortium with Koha libraries, but it would make more sense, you know. So in the bigger picture down the road, maybe adding libraries, but I doubt that would happen very soon.
Is Stanley part of LCEI?
I don't really know which one. I know that they're in one with
Okay.
a lot of Eastern Idaho libraries.
Okay.
So, and they just switched and they loved Koha, and that's one of the reasons we went to Koha. So
I'm imagining the other libraries being Ketchum and like Bellevue.
yep, exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Something else to look for, and I didn't know this when I merged with a library and had to pay the consequences. You want your barcodes to be unique.
Okay.
So make sure that our consortium, everyone has to use a prefix coming in. Like, if you don't use one, we're going to rebarcode your library.
Okay.
Because you need, Koha's not going to let it. So my bad experience was when we merged, and it wasn't with Koha, but I think this would be universal. It randomly dropped the second item that shared the same barcode. And I had an elementary school library. It was horrible because I couldn't trust the computer because kids don't know what they checked out. And I'm like, okay, I always had to describe the book because they don't know it by the title. They know it by like the picture on the front. But I mean, I don't know how many physical inventories we had to do to catch every single, and then you have to manually add all those back in. That if we'd known beforehand and ran the list to compare barcodes and changed the barcodes of all the duplicates, we could have saved so much time, energy, frustration, stress on both me and the students, because they weren't very happy with me either.
No, that's really good. I think we'll be fine with Ketchum, but Bellevue could be another story. So, and that's the one we're going to probably go with first. So that's
And-
good information.
And
Thank you.
that applies for user barcodes too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all. That's really helpful information. Thank you.
So what else we got?
I have a slightly cataloging question. Do any of your libraries use the linking fields to link? So we're using it with our journals. Journals with distinct titles are linked to a parent record. And we're cleaning those up. And having this in a consortium is really, it's a little bit harder than if it was just one library. And we're wanting to do a journal index, which is going to be even more cluttery. Has anyone, like, are you using linking fields? Have you created an index of some sort in your library? Am I going to be the first one? Okay.
So let us know in a couple of years how that's coming.
I will. Yeah, no, it will be a COA conference presentation, I am sure. This is what you should avoid. It's like my item type project. It's just as difficult, confusing, and rewarding. That would, I mean, doing the work to clean up everyone's item types and get all that sorted. Our search results are so much better. Like, to quote Heather, indicators matter. If your indicators on your title fields are incorrect, or you are missing a 008 or a leader, your search results will not appear correctly. So that actually might be something to also look, is make sure that their MARC records contain the leader and the 008. I don't know if Koha will let you import it in now. Ours were historic, long time ago. it would let you import bad records. And so that's how we inherited them. And then it took me a while to figure out, oh, these are missing information. That's not good. And then you got to fix it. But if you did that going in, that would be helpful.
Anybody else got anything going on consortia related?
I have a question about claims return procedures. So we just had a question come in, and so we're trying to figure out the workflow for us now. And I was just wondering what other consortia do when an item is claims returned. How is that removed from the patron's record? How are the charges removed, but it still says claims returned? So we're trying to figure out that process right now. And I was just wondering what everyone else did.
We check the item in and then check it back out to the patron with a new due date and then mark it as claims returned. So then if it was overdue or something, that gets cleared. But yet it still shows that the patron potentially has it out. And we search for it a couple times, and then if it still doesn't come back, then we have a procedure to put it into long overdue again. It's kind of wonky. I don't like it, but yeah.
I'm just, yeah, that's what Bywater recommended we do. And I'm just afraid we have so many CERC staff members and, some that are just work Sundays by themselves. And it's like really hard to get that information across, that workflow across. So
Yeah.
I had asked them if there was anything I can do on my end at the central site for them. And so, yeah, that's what we're trying to come up with now, is maybe that they can mark the item as claims returned, and then the charges will still be there, but then I'll get a report that says what it is, and then I'll just go in and manually update it. So that's where we're at right now, but yeah, that's the workflow we had recommended. Thank you.
We have 50 libraries, and I think we have 50 different ways to handle claims returns. So
I'm just curious, Michelle, because so if a book is marked claim returned, there's a charge on the patron's account. Is that what you were saying, or?
Yes, we're
Okay.
still, or hold on, let me look back at the question.
Okay. No, and
I think when you I think when you mark something as claims returned, it gives you the option of whether or not to bill the patron at the time, doesn't it?
Okay, because we don't charge for claimed return. We never put a charge on there. So ours just checks in and it stays on their record that they had a claim, but if they return it, it just, we don't charge like a lost book. It's different. So I was just curious. That's interesting that I never thought about actually doing that, but we don't really have an issue too much with claimed return in our library, maybe 4 or 5 a year.
We don't use the functionality that does the charge the fee when on the claim thing, but we give them, I think, another 2 weeks, and then we have a report we run on Thursdays that we go and look for the book. So they get a couple more opportunities to find it themselves or us find it. And then if nobody finds it, then it goes back into being overdue, and then it ends up back in the long overdue process as a regular long overdue. So that's basically, they do get billed if it's never found. But we don't use the part on the claimed return that says bill it or whatever.
All right, so that's the difference. So we use the overdue cron job. So things that are just missing or they, like, the patron hasn't done anything with it, and then or they assume they've brought it back, and so they get a bill that says, oh, you haven't returned these items. So that's what's happening, is that so they have the bill, and then they go to the library and say, I returned this item, I shouldn't be billed for this. That's where we're getting into okay, so they'll mark the item as claims returned, And then the chargers are staying there because it was already in build status. So
Right.
that's at that point, it's frontline staff would need to check the item in to remove all of that, all of them, that messages, and then check it back out, and then mark it claims returned again. And so that is just way too much. And so, and since it's already in build status, if they're just marking it claims returned, could then Bywater create a report or for me, and then have it automatically sent, and then I would just go in and get rid of the charges for them, so they wouldn't have to worry about it. So frontline staff would just say, okay, we've marked it claims returned. It'll be, charges will be removed by, you know, the end of the day, or, you know, 2 days from now, or whatever, check back then. So it wouldn't be as automated, but at least the patrons would be assured that they are not getting charged for anything anymore.
But yet the patron would have a record that, you know, say if they claim return 12 times in 1 year, that will stay on the patron record, but the charge is gone. And then
So
it's up to the library to say, okay, you know, you've had 12 claims returned. Come on.
So there's not a way to specify when the patron supposedly returned it. So in other words, to say they returned it 3 weeks ago, therefore there should be no overdues or lost in accrued, because that would solve the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if there was a field in the claims return that said, you know, this is the date they claimed to have returned it. There is a note field in the claims return, but that doesn't really do anything other than leave a note on the claim.
So there are 2 bugs that they brought up. Like, one would be to move the claims returned out of the lost status, because that seems to be like part of the problem is, since it was billed, it doesn't automatic, like you have to manually change it to claims returned, but yet it doesn't take off the charge. So that this would work on that. And then there's another one that would claims return doesn't refund lost item charge when mark lost items as return includes when marking an item as return claim and refund lost item fee is on. So it should be working, and it's not. So that's what this second bug is talking about. So either or both bugs would probably be beneficial to help with this workflow. But until then, I'm just going to manually remove the charges.
I've
And those-
been trying to get some notices added to our bookmobile that we haven't opened up yet. So I've been copying our old ones and going through those. And I just noticed, and maybe you guys already knew this, but the auto renew notice that's not the digest, you can't set that by branch. It has to be, you have to use the top level notice. Even if you create the notices for each branch, it doesn't send those ones out. And I see that there actually is a bug they're working on it, but it was just something that surprised me that I didn't know was happening.
I think the reason for that is because when they automatically claims returned, it's not connected to, the renewal isn't connected to, or excuse me, when they automatically renew, it's not connected to a branch.
Oh, yeah.
So
I know
Koha doesn't have a branch to link it to.
But the auto renew digest does.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, but there's a bug in there that they're working on, so I'm hoping it's gonna be something I can customize. Because we like to put our library branch's name as at the end of it. That's basically all we do to make it different, but just something I saw that was interesting that I didn't even realize was happening.
I think you should be able to add that to customize the sending library's name. I think if you do that in template toolkit, you can do it on the on the single notice, and then it adjusts itself for each branch that.
Yeah, Lucas did that for us, and then Sturgis got confused and did it to their own personal notice, and it didn't do anything. And anyway, it's but yeah, it looks like it would be something that works, but he doesn't actually recommend doing it. I think maybe hopefully this bug will get pushed through and then it'll just be working.
Hmm. Since everybody doesn't have a lot to talk about, I'll mention again that, you know, if you, the custom, the notice and slips library on the wiki, if you have notices and slips that are different than the built-in ones in Koha, go ahead and add them to the wiki.
I tried signing up for a wiki account and it wouldn't let me.
It wouldn't let you.
No, I got some sort of weird error. I can't remember what it was now.
I had trouble with that a long time ago too, when I first, not the first time I got a wiki account, but after a while it stopped working, and then I had to actually talk to somebody to get it to work, and I can't remember who I talked to. But if you, what I would recommend if you try to sign up for a wiki account and it won't let you, is send a notice to the Koha mailing list and say, I'm trying, can anybody help me with this? And I think somebody will get back to you and say,
Okay.
And help you.
Yeah, it used to be David Nend that managed that. I don't know if he's still doing that though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably in the roles, on the roles page. It probably says who roles for 2405. Well, here it says Thomas Dukleth is the wiki manager. So he might be the person to get in touch with. Yeah, but then of course it doesn't have an email address for him. So I would just email the Koha community mailing list and say, I'm having trouble with the wiki, and somebody will probably get in touch with you.
Sounds good, thanks.
Sure.
On the topic of notices, I am super flippin' excited about this bug. We talked about it at WebDev, and I've started playing with it, and it's like I've been fighting with this whole print overdue notice thing for individual branches for a while, and I got stuck because every time I tried to print something, it didn't print out right. And this like solves all my problems, and I can show you what it kind of looks like. The bug says it's 2311, but if you're a Bywater customer, Lucas told us that you can actually do this right now. So I've been playing with it, and it's really cool. So let me share my screen. So what it does is you set up a notice template using the reports module here, and then you've got your template toolkit here. And then once that's set up, you get a new button when you're in a report that says run with template. So I've got my report that I set up and the template I set up. And then when I run the template, it passes the report data through the template toolkit, and I can do all this cool, fun formatting stuff. So I'll be able to like create direct links for them to go directly to their print notices, and then once I get it fully set up, it'll print like Andrew's thing was in Slack, where it's like printing out the page just with a button click, because right now we're using that fallback email and it's not formatted at all and it's ugly and they have to spend a lot of time doing that. So yeah, I'm excited that you can do this sort of stuff, and I'm excited about the other possibilities, but mostly excited that I've finally gotten past my little writer's block on this overdue issue, and I can put it behind me soon.
That is pretty cool. I was at that meeting and I remember the discussion, but I haven't had time to play with it yet. So now I can just go play with it on your system and don't have to do anything on my own.
Thanks for showing the examples, because I was trying to figure out how you would use that, but now I'm thinking of if we encourage our libraries to run monthly reports for their boards, and if they had something printable like that, they could just run reports. They would love that.
Yeah, there's just so much potential. Like, like right now, reports come out in a table. That's it. But like with this, you can tell the report how to look any which way, and it's just it's like a huge customization tool, I think.
Cool. We've got 18 minutes left. Does anybody want to jump in with something new, or should we call it good? Call it early.
I have one bug that I
Awesome.
only bring up because apparently Nick needs sign off on this to move it forward, and he's not here. So I'm doing my duty by passing it along. I can't speak to it with any more intelligence than anyone else here, but I don't use the transport cost matrix, so maybe somebody that does would be excited about getting this signed off.
I don't see a test plan is my issue, unless it's in the bug.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah, I would love to sign off on it if I knew what to do. So, because this
Comment
is
on it. Ask that.
what
Yeah.
we're waiting for. So absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right. I don't see an obvious step-by-step plan either, so. I don't know.
It's also, it might be hard for us to test because it probably requires the holds queue to be rebuilt. But I don't know. Like if the real-time holds queue eliminates that need. I don't know.
I just added, is there a test plan for this as a comment? So, but
Well, it's still in discussion, right?
it says in discussion. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it's not really in discussion because there's a patch and it can be tested.
Yeah. Yeah, without, that's usually when a patch gets to this stage, if there's a test plan, at least you can figure out what it's supposed to do. But that would be nice to be able to optimize the holds queue based on the trend. If building the holds queue is tied better to the transportation cost matrix, that would be awesome. Because right now, the way the transportation cost matrix is, it's always trying to fill the hold at the top of the list based on the transportation cost matrix. But if it were to look at the transportation cost matrix and say, this thing that's in position number 3 could better be filled, could fill this more quickly than whatever's at number 1, that would be an interesting way to do that. So
It also looks like Nick marked that other bug a duplicate, but like right now the problem with the transport cost matrix is it only checks it once and then it goes out to the whole wide world. And it looks like this must fix that where it cycles through it instead of just checking once.
anybody else got anything fun and exciting? Well, why don't we call it early, and everybody can, at least I can go to lunch early. And it was nice meeting you, Lynn, and let us know how things go in Hailey.
Will do. Thank you all. This is great. This is the first one I've been to, so, but it's very helpful on a number of levels. So thank you.
I see Michelle
Wait,
dropped another
so-
bug in there.
Yeah,
Oh.
I want to hear about this too. Have you gotten any updates on that?
0 updates, so just adding it there for the
Granular
chat.
cataloging permissions.
Still looking for
So we
sponsorship,
talked.
not on the development thing, so just
Yeah, we
wanted to.
talked with Lizette yesterday, and she's on the dev team now, and she said that they are actually really working on that whole dev website revamp thing. So hopefully that's coming sooner than later. And she said that they were, because we're waiting on a development quote too, and they were going to work on that in the like today, right, George? I think the
Yeah,
developers are
that's there's a long outstanding development that NEKLS paid half of in 2015 before I even worked here. And it's been stuck at this spot for like 10 years and nobody seems to know what to do with it. And I'm at the point where I just don't care because it was one of my predecessors that sponsored this. And it's like, I just don't, the way I described it is I don't have a dog in that fight. It was a plan to change the circulation rules from being this wide, essentially, to being this tall, which who cares? You know, it's not enough, significant enough of a change. There were some nice features in it, like there was one of the things it would tell you if there was a circulation rule you were creating that was redundant. Like if there was a rule that would supersede that rule, it would let you know which rules superseded other rules. If you were creating an unnecessary rule, it would tell you. But we've paid for the first half of it, and a lot of that was back end stuff, and the back end stuff has all been incorporated, but the front end stuff kind of got stuck with the community because people like me said, I don't see the advantage of going from this wide to this tall. If it's not all going to fit on the screen at once, it doesn't matter which direction you're scrolling. So they're probably going to call me during their meeting, and at which time I'll probably just say, why don't we just call it good, and which will give them the opportunity to, they're trying to clear up older issues. And so this 10-year-old issue is, if they can get that out of the way, then they can move on to some more pressing things. So if nobody else has got anything going on, let's call it good, and I'll stop the recording and